Welcome to the Week 15 edition of the War Room, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe. It's the fantasy playoffs. I don't quite have the full fantasy beard. I got a little scruff going, not a full fantasy beard today. But we're in the thick of things and lots to discuss today. So we're going to dive right in. Of course, with me this week and every week pretty much is Pat Thorman. Pat, what's going on today, man?
Busy morning, busy time of year. Got the Christmas shopping done yesterday. Got the lineups getting set this morning, and there's a lot of news going on. So yeah, like you said, let's dive right into this.
Yeah, there is a lot of news, and I think there's a lot of challenging situations to deal with. So maybe we'll start the show today with a lot of these running back situations. That's really where the question marks are, and we'll sort of go team by team. Let's start with Seattle, and obviously, worst case scenario for fantasy owners, also for the Seahawks here. I mean, it looks like Marshawn Lynch, is trending in the right direction for their playoff push, but not for this regular season. Obviously, they bring in Bryce Brown. They bring in Christine Michael. Just when we thought we could let go of these guys, they pull us back in. And, of course, we don't know what to do. Fred Jackson is still there, of course. And I guess for PPR purposes, that is the one thing that we could say is that, yes, he's going to be a flex-worthy option. He's a fantasy-relevant, flex-worthy option, Fred Jackson is. But from there, I mean, how do you make heads or tails of this? Are you buying in that Bryce Brown is going to get the majority of the workload? Is this too risky for you? I mean, what are your general thoughts about Seattle today?
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna. I would start Brown if forced to choose. I mean, he's going to get the first couple carries from what reports are, and if he runs with it, then I'm sure they'll stick with him. And they're a team that likes to ride one guy. If they find him, they're going to love life, especially if it's a good matchup against the Cleveland run defense. As far as starting a guy in the playoffs, that's a little bit too risky for my taste. If I have any other viable options.
All right, so and I agree with you. I think I'm not going to roll the dice. I think would it shock me if we got RB2 value out of Bryce Brown? No, it wouldn't. But then again, this is a guy who also could get 10 carries and give you 3 yards. I mean, he's done similar things in the past. A lot of people focus on that first 2 games in 2012. Obviously, really small sample size. It was the perfect storm, lightning in a bottle for that little stretch. But otherwise, all he's done is try to bounce runs outside, and it just does not work at the NFL level. And Christine Michael, as much as I want to believe, you probably have a better shot at believing in Santa Claus right now than Christine Michael. But let's go to Carolina, another situation where Jonathan Stewart, obviously, worst case scenario, and this was one of the things he sort of avoided, the typical Jonathan Stewart type injury, this is exactly the typical Jonathan Stewart type injury. So now we're left with Fozzie Whitaker, Mike Tolbert, and Cameron Artis-Payne. And obviously, I love Cameron Artis-Payne's long-term outlook. I think that he profiles the best to fill in here, but that's not what we're hearing necessarily, and this is a really volatile situation. Again, are you willing to take a shot on Whitaker today because he at least looks like he's the front runner, or are you avoiding this one too?
Yeah, I mean Whitaker maybe in PPR again if you're desperate, but I mean you can't forget that Cam Newton's a guy who runs for touchdowns. So not only do you have Tolbert vulturing touchdowns, you got Newton vulturing touchdowns near the goal line. Like you mentioned, Artis-Payne does profile the best, but he's a guy who's been inactive for a number of weeks in a row. So it's a real big mess there. They have matchup advantages at tight end, so I like Greg Olsen. The reports are positive on his health, and it's a game that. If they get up big, which is possible, they might pull Cam. You don't know exactly what they're going to do. So that it's another really murky situation. That if you're in fantasy playoffs and you have something a little more solid to hang your hat on, that's probably the way to go because you're kind of throwing darts in this situation as well.
Yeah, really are, and potentially also throwing some darts in New England. Again, worst case scenario, this team loses a running back at a terrible time, and LeGarrette Blount. Not a stud by any means, but has, he's more than capable in this offense and does a good job at that. Now we're left with Brandon Bolden, we're left with James White, and we're left with Joey Josefa. I'm trying my best on this one. And Pat, would it shock you if Yusefa goes out and has 32 carries for 150 yards today?
That might shock me, but it wouldn't shock me if he got 2 goal line plunges.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big back. He was like 245, 6 foot, big guy. So he kind of profiles a little more in the blunt role. More so than Bolden. Although Bolden's probably going to get the majority of the carries. Mike Reese, who's really plugged in with the Patriots, that's his best guess. I'm playing this kind of for the passing game. I think that, I mean, Tennessee's run defense has been pretty good over the last 6 weeks or so. And if New England can't run the ball, they're just going to throw little short passes as an extension of the running game. They've done it a million times. Those are completed at a high rate. To keep the clock rolling that direction. So I'm really bullish on Brady. That's not really saying a heck of a lot. I mean, he's could be top ranked quarterback of the week. But if the run game stops working, they're just going to throw short passes. So Bolden's really cheap on DraftKings. Might roll with him there. But other than that, it's I'm playing that passing game.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet here. And Brady, still top 5 quarterback. Don't get cute here. People on the Sirius show this morning were asking questions. Somebody asked, Brady or Matthew Stafford. And as much as I like Stafford, just don't get cute here. Play Brady. You don't want to have to deal with an entire offseason where you're, oh man, I should have just started Brady. So just go with your studs. We know we say that all the time, but it's a lesson that does bear repeating over and over and over again. All right, a couple other running back situations still. Looks like Spencer Ware is only going to be available for emergency situations, according to ESPN's Chris Mortensen. That bodes really well for Charcandrick West. Charcandrick West potentially role here would be phenomenal. I think as a mid.
Hi.
Hey, Warren. Hearing your whole conversation there, buddy. Guys, remember, if you come on the Hangout, mute your mics. But anyway, I think that, he's locked in for me as an RB1, Pat, and you look at his price on FanDuel, $5,900. It's going to be tough to pass him up. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, Ware is going to be active, but they only want to use him in an emergency. So when we saw the usage that West got when Jamal Charles went down, it's a bankable workload. That's how Andy Reid likes to run that backfield. And it's not a super matchup on the ground, but he catches passes, and Baltimore has given it up through the air. So yeah, like you said, locked and loaded back end RB1.
And another running back situation we have to deal with is in Jacksonville, where we know that we're very likely to see a pretty heavy workload for Denard Robinson. I'm actually all in on him today, Pat, and I'll tell you why. Not only because he's shown that he's a capable 3-down guy, but also Atlanta's going to be without Paul Warlow, so that's going to force Philip Wheeler into a 3-down role along with Justin Durant. And that's not that Warlow has been that great this season, but that's a downgrade for this defense that is already getting torched by running backs. I think Robinson's a potential RB1 play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was getting goal line carries even when Yeldon was healthy, which he converted one last week. So, yeah, I mean, who else do they really have that they're going to trust throughout the game? He's got big play potential. I think this game has some sneaky shootout potential as well. So, yeah, like you said, all in on Robinson. I think he is the best play of this murky running back situation this week.
And also keep in mind, too, that there's the expectation that C.J. Anderson is going to get a full workload today. That's good for C.J. Anderson. I think you could possibly consider him a borderline RB2. I know it's obviously risky, but, hey, I'm rolling with him in the PFF Staff Dynasty League semifinal. Limited options for me there because of injury, so I'm gonna roll the dice on him in that particular league. It's a deep league. But let's get to some of these start-sit questions. Guys, if you're hanging out, in the Hangout itself, of course, you can enter the chat, and we'll get to all of your start-sit questions. Of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, just use the hashtag WarRoom. That's one word, and we'll do our best to get to those as well. Greg has a question, Sean Drone or Jeremy Hill? And this is interesting, Pat. We got opposite sides of this matchup. We know one thing about the 49ers, they're not particularly good on either side of the ball, but for some strange reason, they really play well in San Francisco, well, sort of San Francisco. but they're a phenomenal matchup for opposing running backs. 6 rushing touchdowns over the last 5 weeks to opposing running backs. I really like Hill. I'm going to go with Hill on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Hill's one of my favorite players of the week. I actually have him running back 9, which is higher than most rankers this week. I mean, the game script should be in his favor. I know that the Niners play better at home, although I think that the more home games they play, I think that's probably more of an anomaly than anything else that will get worked out over time as the sample grows. And like you said, they've been giving it up on the ground lately. You got a rookie quarterback or second-year quarterback in Cincinnati. They're not going to want the best way for them to lose this game is to put it in A.J. McCarron's hands and have him screw it up. So they'll probably play conservative. They need this win. Ride Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, going to Warren here. Warren's question, he needs one in a PPR format. Hightower, Golden Tate, Buck Allen, or Denard Robinson. I'm going Denard Robinson again. I think that he's just the workload's going to be there. He's a pretty explosive player. And you know the thing about him, Pat, that I think a lot of people don't realize, he's bigger than people think. This guy's 6 foot tall. He's not a little scat back at 5'9", 175 pounds. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He can handle the full workload. Obviously incredibly athletic, so I think for me it's a no-brainer to go Denard Robinson.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. It's not really that close for me either.
And Warren also has a question at tight end, PPR format again. He's asking, boy, oh boy, do you have 5 tight ends on your roster? I don't know if I'd advise that strategy, but Kelsey, Zach Miller, Keith Miller, so it's Miller time. Ertz or Ebron. I'm going Kelsey. I'm going to stick by this one. For as much maligned as Kelsey is, he is the number 7 fantasy tight end, and he's got upside in this offense. So I'm going to stick with him, going Kelsey.
Yeah, I am too. It's not a great matchup against the Baltimore defense, although they do give up yards through the air, and they are stiff on the ground. So yeah, it's tough to jump off Kelsey at this stage of the season.
Yeah, you just got to kind of roll with it. He's the best option there. Anything else is getting a little too cute. I can understand those. Well, not Ebron, though. Not Ebron. Just not Ebron. But either way, Jordan, a couple questions. He's asking us to pick 2 in a standard scoring league. And also, you're saying, can I trust Jeremy? Yes. Yeah, I mean, as much as you possibly can at running back. It's just a brutal season for running back. But wouldn't it be fitting, though, if Jeremy Hill went out and had a massive day after the lackluster season that he had and the high draft stock that he had? So Jeremy Hill, Buck Allen, Frank Gore, Michael Crabtree. Standard scoring, always going to lean towards the running backs in any sort of flex situation. This is a little tricky, though. Buck Allen is an intriguing player this week, Pat. I think that the volume should be there. The matchup's not entirely ideal against a hot Kansas City team, but I think the volume is there, and this kid has shown that he can make something out of nothing so far in this feature role for the Ravens. So what are you thinking here?
Well, definitely Hill. The standard kind of takes a little bit of luster off Buck because he's a great pass catching back. But like you mentioned, the volume is going to be there. I think that he offers the highest floor of those 3. If you want to shoot for ceiling, I would go with Crabtree. I think that that Green Bay game's got a little bit of sneaky shootout potential. And Green Bay's down one of their top corners. So I think Crabtree's probably got the ceiling. Allen's got the floor, depending on what your matchup calls for.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then we look to his other. He says, Mike, our buddy Mike Clay here, the boss man, has Golden Tate and Jarvis Landry projected at the same for a half-point PPR. And is Tate worth the upside? No. You're playing Landry here. You want upside. Jarvis Landry has massive upside as well, and he also has a higher floor. For me, it's Landry, and it's not really close. Landry's a solid, almost a front-end, potentially, wide receiver 2. Tate, front-end wide receiver 3 for me this week, Pat.
Yeah, I agree with that. Landry's got a bankable workload. He gets a ton of targets. And I like Tate this week. I think Tate's in a pretty good matchup. That game's got a pretty big ceiling as well. But this is Landry for me for sure.
And James now has a question. Aiken LaFell Sneed in a PPR, 18-point underdog. I hope that's an underdog on either ESPN or Yahoo using the PFF projections. With an inferior team, well, I mean, you made the playoffs, so you're certainly not completely inferior for sure. This one's a tough one. It's really tricky. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I like what Snead did last week. I like the potential over-under in this game. Certainly a little risky to go with Aiken. I probably would lean Snead here, but it's super close for me. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, the PPR helps Aiken because you should. I mean, they don't have very many people to throw to in that offense. But it's like you said, he needs upside. I think Snead probably offers more of that than Aiken does. LaFell needs to start playing better. He could score 2 touchdowns today. I think that, like I said, the Patriots are going to be throwing the ball a lot, but we need to see LaFell play better before we can trust him, especially in the fantasy playoffs. So Snead for upside, Aiken for floor.
Yeah, and just LaFell in a PPR too. It doesn't do it for me right now. But either way, moving on to Brent has a team defense question. Always interesting when we get team defense questions, and he's asking between the Bengals and the Pats. And obviously good matchups for both of these teams. The Pats facing Tennessee. First taste of Bill Belichick for Marcus Mariota. Welcome to the league, kid. And then San Francisco, of course, for the Bengals. But the Bengals on the road. Patriots just projected out so strongly in my model this week that I'm going to lean towards the Patriots. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I agree. They're at home. Their pass rush is really clicking. Everyone was worried about their secondary coming into the season, and they said the only thing that could help that is the pass rush. And the pass rush is coming through. They're getting a ton of sacks, a ton of pressures, and their secondary is actually playing better than everyone expected. So I think they got a strong chance to force multiple turnovers in this one. Go with the Pats.
All right, and now we're going to, let's see, David's question, Barnage or Buck Allen in a PPR flex? I'm leaning Buck Allen. I like Barnage, don't get me wrong, but I'm leaning Buck Allen there. What do you think?
Yeah, especially with the PPR, like you mentioned before, Buck can catch 5 to 8 passes, no problem. Barnage is obviously going against Seahawks. They've given up some points to tight ends, but relying on Manziel in Seattle is not really where you want to go in the playoffs.
No, that's not the ideal. It's the ideal to go to the other side and play the Seahawks defense. But James, another question here. He's asking between Woodhead, Hillman / Anderson. I don't know if you can play both or either. It's Anderson, by the way, if you have both of those. James White, Fozzie Whitaker in a PPR. And I'm not sure if you're choosing just one there, if that's what this is saying. What do you think there? I guess if we choose one, Pat, what do you think?
I would probably go with Anderson. I think he was playing really well before he got hurt. He looked like he was back to the Anderson of old, especially against the Patriots. So if they are going to give him his share of the touches, like they mentioned this morning, is going to happen. I think that's probably the best play with the highest upside. It's PPR, so Woodhead's always in play in PPR, but his volume has really fallen off lately, so he's tough to trust.
Yeah, it might be a big Melvin Gordon day, potentially. Finally, hopefully, we might see that. He's been good this season, folks. He has been. It's just the team. It's just one of those teams that's having a lost season. Dallas, Baltimore, San Diego lost seasons, and obviously could potentially be the last time we see San Diego in San Diego here. But moving on to, let's see, who am I at? Alan's question here. Crabtree, Cobb, Demaryius Thomas, wide receiver 2, and flex there. This is tricky. I think that you like the matchup now for Michael Crabtree with Sam Shields being out, so I think I'm comfortable with that. Pat, also, you might have noticed the over/under of that game ticked up once Sam Shields was didn't make the trip with the team. So I like Crabtree there. Then it comes down to Thomas or Cobb. I'm leaning Thomas. I'm not crazy about either.
Thomas is one of those guys that's tough to rank. I'm lower than consensus on him this week. We just haven't seen him put it together, which is even when Manning was around, but especially with Osweiler. He's still getting plenty of volume. He is actually Osweiler's most targeted receiver against the blitz, and Pittsburgh blitzes a ton. So he might get peppered with targets. Pittsburgh really can't cover very well. I'm actually going to go Cobb over Crabtree, though. So I'm going to go Thomas and Cobb. I mean, Cobb's uses last week. He had 12 targets. They handed the ball to him 3 times. Since Mike McCarthy took over play calling, I think they really want to get him involved. He's got a good matchup in the slot against T.J. Carey. I'm a little more confident in Cobb than Crabtree, but it's super close. I think I might have him back-to-back rankings. So I say Thomas and Cobb, but you really can't go wrong. Those are all 3 pretty good options.
Yeah, pretty good options for sure here. Eric needs 3 out of 4. Lacey Hill, Denard Robinson, Sammy Watkins. And if I don't have, it's non-PPR, and he's and by the way, folks, when people say my opponent's starting so and so I have to start. No, you start the team that scores the most points. It doesn't matter who your opponent is starting. It doesn't matter who you're starting at quarterback or at receiver or whatever. Put the team out there that is going to score the most points. Don't get cute about it. This isn't a complex puzzle or anything. The game actually gets pretty easy when you think about it that way. So don't worry about who you're starting with this, that, and the third. Right here, though, boy, I'm locking in Denard Robinson. I think Jeremy Hill you almost have to lock in. So then it comes down to Eddie Lacy. Can we trust him for Sammy Watkins? And, boy, Pat, what do you think on that one?
That's a tough one. I am on Watkins this week, especially in DFS. I'm hoping that people are kind of turned off because last week, kind of left them wanting a little more when everyone expected that game to go crazy. Lacy is coming on, but Oakland's got a pretty good run defense. So I think, man, that is tough. I think Lacy probably offers you a higher floor because that Redskins-Bills game could be played at a pretty slow pace, and Sammy might not get the volume, but Sammy could pop two real easy. So I think Sammy for ceiling, Lacy for floor.
Yeah, I guess that's what you have to consider here if you're really a dog already potentially, because there's 2 games down already, so you could potentially already be a dog in that game. It's tough. I do like Hill. I think he's a sneaky play this week. I'm definitely going there.
Yeah.
I have Watkins as number 12. I have Lacy as let's see, what do I have him as? 12. So it's really, really close. I agree with your take, though. So if you need that floor, go Lacy. Obviously dangerous. But then Watkins is dangerous, too, because he's had a tendency to disappear at times this season. All right. So Warren said he had to pick 2 in PPR between Tate, Hightower, and Buck Allen. And I'm going with the running backs there. I'm not going to go with Tate here. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, Hightower's got me a little nervous because he got a huge workload last week, and he did okay with it. I think he averaged 2.9 yards a carry. So if he does lose volume, and that's a lot more volume than even Mark Ingram got when he was healthy. So Hightower does make me a little bit nervous. I think Tate's got some more upside, and especially in PPR. I think I would go with Tate over Hightower.
Now we're disagreeing a lot today. That's good. Not for everybody else, though. Flip some coins. Warren has a kicker question. Don't get those too often, and it comes down to I hope you're not rostering 3 kickers because that is just a waste of space. Your bench should be composed of 2 positions in most fantasy leagues: running back and wide receiver. That's all you need. Load up at those positions. But Warren, between Josh Brown, Matt Prater, or Mason Crosby. Prater, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, not Brown because the Giants get down, they're not kicking field goals, so you want to avoid underdog kickers in general. It's close between Prater and Crosby. That New Orleans Detroit matchup has a higher over/under, so go with Prater.
Yeah, that's my logic as well. It's a high-scoring game, so you want a piece of it if you can. So Prater. Tricky, right? But anyway, moving on to Greg Rowland, and I guess these are defense options: Ravens, Falcons, Browns, Saints, 49ers, Giants. None. Boy, I don't like. Let's see. Falcons I don't like at all because Jacksonville's offense has been really hot. The Falcons are playing shorthanded. The Saints in a high over-under game. The Saints defense is terrible. The 49ers, maybe them.
Yeah.
If anything, they're going up against a rookie quarterback who can potentially throw a pick 6. He already did last week. Yeah. So they're the number 32. And just a reminder, there are 32 teams in the league. So they are the number 32 defense in fantasy scoring. Last I checked, that's not very good, but it's team defense, so anything can happen, and the worst defenses can be relevant. That's what's so cool about the team defense position. All those haters out there, I love the team defense position. And, maybe the 49ers.
Yeah, like you said, McCarron could potentially mess things up. And if you want to go with the Niners at home narrative, that fits there too. And that is a rough list.
Yeah,
with the Niners.
Pretty bad. A lot of teams have 2 team defenses probably in that league, which still blows my mind that people do that. But David asking, would we play Barnage over Hightower or West in the PPR flag? No, I'm playing West automatically. I don't even question that one whatsoever. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, it's West. West is like you said earlier, borderline run back one.
Yeah, pretty easy call for there. Kip needs 2 in a standard scoring league. Bonus point for 100 yards. I like that. I like those formats when you get the bonus points there. But again, doesn't matter who your opponent has. So Randall Cobb, Brandon LaFell, Willie Snead, Tim Hightower. Boy, I think that right here I'm going to lean Cobb and Hightower in this particular format. I think in the standard scoring you almost have to start Hightower here. Not like you said, he didn't play particularly well, but the volume could be there in this game, especially if they get up in this game. It could have that shootout, but he's going to see the ball a lot. Pat, what are you thinking about pace in this game as well? Just quick thought there, and then what do you think on the question?
Well, New Orleans, runs a lot of plays. They don't run at a quick tempo like themselves, but they wind up running a lot of plays. It's just kind of the way it happens. Sometimes they actually do that to the detriment of the other team, and the other team doesn't run a whole heck of a lot. But I think with both defenses being suspect here and both offenses having big play potential, I think the over under says it all. I mean, there's 51 point over under. There's going to be points scored. Neither team is good at pass defense, so that there's a lot of throwing that slaps the clock. They add more plays, so yeah, I think the pace is going to be pretty high in this one.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. Lots of pace in that Eagles game too, by the way. And let me see, Linval Joseph is inactive. Ooh. All right, there you go. Well, no Linval Joseph, but real quick here too. James has one more question. Hightower, T.Y. Hilton, Bryce Brown in the standard. Well, that's close. I mean, you toss Bryce Brown because it's just too risky. So, Pat, what do you think coming down to T.Y. Hilton or Tim Hightower?
Hilton's always had pretty good games against Houston. No one talks about him really, but with the quarterback situation being what it is, and this being a standard format, I think that you really want a piece of that game with a high potential scoring situation. So I think Hightower is the call in standard.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. It's close, but all right. So just flipping through some of the news here really quickly. Alshon Jeffrey active, so there was a little bit of worry that he wasn't going to play. Active, no concerns there. Zach Miller as well. So obviously firing those guys up. Dante Moncrief does help T.Y. Hilton a little bit being out there against the Texans. That's a tough matchup though for the Colts, and this Colts offense has really been struggling. Fozzie Whitaker is starting. All right, so whatever. Yeah, whoever's on the field for the first play doesn't necessarily mean much in the NFL right now. If Fozzie Whitaker struggles, Cameron Artis-Payne goes out, gets the hot hand, all of a sudden he has 18 carries in this game. Wouldn't shock me at all. But here's the move. If your waiver wires are going to close in about an hour here, before they lock up, stash Cameron Artis-Payne. You probably have a bench. Drop one of your team defenses or kickers that you have on your bench and stash Cameron Artis-Payne. Because if it doesn't work out, okay, you drop next week for whoever. But if you get into the championship here and we see Jonathan Stewart out one more week and Artis-Payne plays well today, he could be in for a nice workload in Week 16. So that's my sharp move. Pat, any closing thoughts here on Week 15?
Just see Scott Chandler is inactive for the Patriots, so that obviously bodes well for Gronkowski. Real quick, the Titans blitz a lot. Gronkowski has got 8 touchdowns against the blitz this year. He's Brady's most targeted receiver against the blitz. I love Brady and Gronkowski stack. It's expensive. I don't think it's going to be overly highly owned.
Beauty to that stack, though, is that running back's so cheap this week that there's so many values. You don't need to start Peterson in daily lineups. You can get away with Denard Robinson, with Charkandrick West, with David Johnson. You could roll the dice on some of these other players. I'm rolling the dice on a few lineups with Buck Allen on DraftKings just because of the PPR format. So nice and cheap. Brandon Bolden, nice and cheap if you want to roll the dice for upside there. It's a great week to do so. So that is going to take us up to the noon hour here. So best of luck to everybody in Week 15 with the semifinals on the line here. May the force, of course, be with all of you. And that's going to do it. We'll be back here for Week 16. Week 16 is going to be our last show, by the way, folks. No Week 17 show because we shouldn't be playing fantasy football in Week 17. But moving right along, and then that'll do it. So Check us out, Pro Football Focus. Follow Pat at Pat_Thorman. Follow me at Jeff Ratcliffe. So for Pro Football Focus, he's Pat, I'm Jeff, and that's a wrap.